Monday, October 19th, 1987, stock markets worldwide crashed, beginning in Hong Kong, then spreading to Europe, and finally hitting the United States. Wall Street suffered its greatest loss ever in a single day on what is referred to as Black Monday, as the Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted 508 points, while the S&P 500 index dropped 20% and the Nasdaq lost 11%. To put this into perspective, the second worst day in history of the Dow came on October 28, 1929, when it dropped 13% the day before the stock market crash of 1929. Now, 25 years later, we spoke with economist Stephen Guilfoyle from Meridian Equity Partners, Kenny Polcari, Managing Director at ICAP, and Ben Willis, Managing Director at Albert Fried & Company, to help us relive that day and put into perspective what's changed since the events of Black Monday and what investors can ultimately learn from that event.
You were here during the stock market crash in 1987. What was your experience here like?
Well, I have to tell you, I mean, it was so busy. It's almost hard to describe in today's terms because nobody gets that busy in that kind of manic state that we were at that time these days. It has to be, I mean, obviously it's been eclipsed by the events of 9/11, but at that time it had been the worst day of my career. And it still remains one of the worst days of my career, just because I could not keep up with my order flow. We were coming in after that day, because that was a Monday, we came in normal time, but the rest of the week we came in at 6 a.m. every day, and we worked till about 11:30 p.m. every day. And we spent most of our time either trading or clearing up trades, because don't forget, things were done manually at that time. There was no computers. Every single share that traded was traded by a human being. You know, we answered our phones all day. A lot of market makers did not answer their phones on those days because they were told not to, because they were losing too much money.
How does the crash in 1987 compare to 2008?
It's you know, as an old timer, I don't think, I can't even call anything since '87 a crash, because it's just not. It's just, there's not the panic, there's not the fear, there's not the dread. None of that was associated with the recent crashes. Yes, there was money lost and money gained, but there wasn't that sick feeling in your stomach as the market fell apart that we felt back in '87.
I was 26 years old at the time. I had just been married. I had just bought a house. My daughter had just been born. And so for me, you know, life was good. And all of a sudden I walk into this and I'm like, oh my God. It was, you know, part of it was naivete. Part of it, I was still youthful, right? It wasn't like I had so much to lose. I was young. I don't think I had $10,000 in the bank, right? And so it didn't affect me that way. But as the day wore on and you saw the destruction of wealth in the marketplace, it was like unlike any other day that certainly I had seen it for the most part, and like any other day that anyone that was on the floor that day had seen. And as you see, there's not, I mean, today there's televisions and everything down here, and there's the internet and computers, but 1987 there was none of that. There were no televisions, there were no radios. All the information you got because someone from the outside called you and told you, or you saw a news headline. You couldn't even see the whole story, you saw the headline, right?
How are the safeguards that are put in place now different from then?
Well, the safeguards that were put in place then there's some that are similar, but they've evolved. What was put in place was called the sidecar rules, Rule 80A and Rule 80B, and that was where the program trading orders, which are now similar to a high-frequency trading orders, were forced to trade on buy minus if the market was going up, or sell plus if the market was going down. Now you don't have a tick rule for shorts. So the market can continue to be pushed down because there's no segregation of those orders, which is going to be a very rude lesson to be learned when it does happen again, and as I believe it will happen again.
Blame for the crash has been given to such reasons as program trading, portfolio insurance and derivatives, and prior news of worsening economic indicators such as a falling US dollar. Many feared the crash would cause a recession, but the Federal Reserve made a quick response and started pumping money into banks. It took 2 years for the Dow to recover completely, and by September 1989, the market regained all of the value it lost in the 1987 crash.